Mary would say. He waited along with all of heaven and earth to see what this 13-year-old girl would say. What did she say? She said what only 13-year-olds can say. Whatever. Well, actually, she said, I'm the handmaid of the Lord. But that's really first century lingo for whatever. And as the angel takes off and departs from her, Luke says, he goes stage left and we can hear him and see his shoulders drop slightly. Now, it's easy to see why Luke chose this and loved this story and picked it up for his gospel. Because the whole theme of Luke's book is about God being with the ordinary folk, the little people of the earth. Among them, God would make his home. And in Luke, Jesus is most at home in places like, well, at Zacchaeus' house and with Mary and Martha. He's downright with the people. He hung out not in the temple or the palace, but with the people. But you know, his very first home, the very first home was in the darkness and the warm waters of the womb of this 13-year-old girl. That's where we find him this Advent, in the womb, growing, turning, moving, making our hearts glad with expectant love. And I suppose only a woman could preach this kind of mysterious love, from experience, that is. But in this season of darkness, and in these times of darkness, even men and boys are given to learn that God makes his home deep within us, in our flesh and in our bodies. God grows there. That's the way God would have it, at least. But God knows that this is not an easy thing. This is no simple proposal to take on flesh and blood, or for flesh and blood to take on God. There's going to be pain at childbirth. And amidst the joys of loving, there's the grief of losing. Just when you get hooked, you have to let go. There's songs of plenty, but there's cries of thirst and hunger and death. You know what I'm talking about. There is the cross, the torn flesh, the broken body, and then the darkness. How can this be, Mary says? And that is all she asked. But there are several other questions I believe I might have asked, and she might have been thinking. Like, will Joseph stick around? Will my parents still love me? Will my friends stick with me, or will I get dragged into town and stoned for sleeping around? Will the labor be hard? Will there be someone there to help me when my time comes? You say the child will be king of Israel, but what about me? Will I survive his birth? What about me? If questions like that occurred to Mary, she didn't ask him according to the text. But she listened as the angel told her the barest details about how it would all come to pass, and then came her turn to speak. It was going to happen. That much seemed clear, but still she had a choice as to whether to say yes or no. Whether to take hold of the little unknown life the angel held out to her, or to defend herself against it however she could. Mary was the only one in the history of the world who had that particular decision to make. The Eastern Church knows her as the Theotokos, the bearer of God, who consented to carry, to give birth to, and nurse and raise the Son of God. Only one person was ever drafted to fulfill that role. It's still hard to hear her story without hearing a little bit more of our own in it. You see, there's a lot of talk these days, and has been for quite a while, about all the choices we have, about how it is up to each of us to choose our own lives. But perhaps you've noticed how more often than not, they seem to choose us. Our best 10-year strategic plan for our personal life is interrupted by life's own plans for us. by sudden illness, by surprise babies, by aging parents, by an economy that sucks wind. Terrible things happen. Wonderful things happen. But seldom do we ever know ahead of time what's going to happen. Exactly. So like Mary, our choices often boil down to yes or no. Yes, I will live this life that's being held out to me, or no, I'm not going to do that. If you decide to say no, you simply drop your eyes and refuse to look up until you know the angel's gone. Kind of like the doorbell and the salesman, or the phone call without a proper ID. And then you smooth your hair and go back to your spinning, or your reading, or whatever it was, your baking cookies, or whatever you were doing, and pretend that nothing happened. If your life begins to change anyway, you've got several options. You can first of all be stoic. You can refuse to accept it. You can put all of your energy into ignoring it, and insist in spite of all the evidence that it's really not happening to you at all. And if that doesn't work, you can get angry and defend yourself against the unknown, spending all your time trying to get your life back the way it used to be. Then, of course, you can become really bitter and compare yourself to other people whose life seems to be more agreeable than yours, and just lament your unhappy fate. And if you succeed in this, your life may not be an easy one, but you can rest assured that no angels will ever bother you anymore. Or you can decide to say yes. You can decide to be a daredevil, test pilot, a gambler. You can set your book down and listen to a strange creature's strange idea. You can decide to take in a plan you had no idea that you could even play a part in, doing things you don't know how to do for reasons you do not understand. You can take part in a thrilling and dangerous scheme with no script and no guarantees. You can agree to smuggle God into the world inside your own body. Now, deciding to say yes does not mean that you're unafraid, by the way. It just means you're not willing to let your fear keep you locked up in your room. And so you say to the angel, "Here I am, let it be with me according to your word." And in so saying, you become one of Mary's people, one more Theotokos, willing to bear God into the world. Mystic theologian Meister Eckhart in the Middle Ages wrote, "We're all meant to be mothers of God," he said. "What good is it to me if this eternal birth of the divine Son takes place